Okay, here we go. Aloha everyone, and welcome to another Tinker's Academy video. I'm your host, Kay Elmer, and today I've got a very, very special treat. The topic of this video is going to be called Raising the Christ Oil, and I've got on the line with me Ana the Science Witch. So for those of you who don't hang out in our Telegram chat group, for our health and healing chat group, Anaya, which is also Ana Steele, and she lives in Bali, Indonesia. She's a practicing holistic healer. She's got a degree in Chinese traditional medicine, a diploma in Qigong, been practicing Tai Chi for years, Ayurvedic medicine, self-taught, and also a practitioner in electrohealing. She's been, I think, Anna, right? You've been a clinician for 7 years and have been studying for 13. Is that right? Those
Yeah,
numbers?
pretty much. I started studying Ayurveda in 2009 and then graduated in 2013. So, yeah, all of
Yeah.
that combined.
Yeah, that's great. So, welcome and good morning to you. So everybody, this is going to be a real treat. She's one of my favorite people, one of my favorite healers, and how we met was a couple of years ago. We were just chatting in the chat group, and she mentioned that she, used a Lakovsky multi-wave oscillator and a violet ray in her practice, and I was just all ears because my background is bioelectrical magnetics. And so it's kind of just amazing that someone who's a holistic practitioner would be using bioelectrical tools. And so that's how we met. And actually, we did a interview back then. It was like 2 years ago. And so if you want to hear that one, I'll put a link in the video description below, which was basically a video about Anna's background and how she uses bioelectrical devices in her practice. But then since those last 2 years, though, you've really just kind of like expanded, right? I mean, Anna, I just think that, I think you've put out like 20 videos, and you're really a lot of focus on, I think, just the topic we're going to be talking about. I have a hard time explaining it to everybody because I feel like a toddler, when I compare myself to your level of knowledge in terms of how much I know about health and healing. But so for those of you who are interested in what we're going to talk about, the topic of this video is going to be an electromagnetic self-healing practices umbrella. Okay, EM healing without gadgets, a practice one can do every month when the moon aligns with your star sign. This causes an EM amplification in the brainstem and spinal fluid known as the crucifixion. The work, or Anna's books that she's been doing over the last year, contains the process known as raising the Christ oil, which is found in the biblical decodes, which with Taoist Qigong practice of the microcosmic orbit to guide energy through the spine and the cosmic monthly event. It really does work, and Anna's here today to share it with you to help you learn how to do it safe and effectively. So, Anna, good morning, and thank you for joining me. I'm going to jump over to your slides now, and I guess the first question that I had, and I'm a little ahead of the game because I did watch a couple of her videos, folks, and links to those in the video description below as well for those of you who'd like to learn a little bit more about it. But the concept of raising the Christ oil, could you explain that in layman terms? Like a lot of us are self-healers, right? We want to improve our health, improve our wellness, improve our consciousness. And but what is exactly, like, when you say the Christ oil, what is the Christ oil?
Well, firstly, what we have
Okay.
to understand about all of these words is that they're actually all coded words. So, Jesus Christ, when we decode what the etymology or the word root meaning means of Jesus Christ, we actually get two words. And Jesus means the seed or the essence or the spirit. And the Christ or the Christ means a cross, or the sun going around the cross is the agricultural cycle of the 4 seasons, and also means anointing oil. So when we put those two together and we apply it to the anatomy and physiology of the body, it's talking about a seed that we can use, our seed, our essence, our spirit essence, that we can anoint ourselves with every month when the sun goes around the Earth and the moon goes around the Earth. So it's kind of like, it's a deep code to start breaking down.
Okay.
So when all of that is put into the context of the human body, it's basically an event that happens within your body, excuse me, once a month, when the moon comes into your star sign and aligns with the month you were born, your star sign, and it takes 2.1 days. You get an electromagnetic amplification in your body because of certain elements that are in your brain. And
Okay.
when that happens, you can utilize your time in a specific energy practice to optimize your energy flow. And that will then have a cascading effect leading on to physical body changes, self-cleaning, self-detox, cleaning out the mental patterns of the mind, and just kind of clearing out all of the blockages of the body. So as you start practicing it more and more, every month, every year, you can then build your consciousness as well.
Okay. Yeah. So is it safe to say, because of my background, bioelectrical, magnetics, quantum energy, biofields, tuning, and sort of so forth. So I think is it safe to say that we all are energy beings and we have our own biofield. We live in an environment that has its own biofield, let's say the earth, and then because we're living symbolically with the earth, we're sort of like aligned with the earth, the earth's own magnetic and energy field. And then so you're saying that we're also, if we are doing or have a specific goal for health and mind, if we take into consideration the concepts that that we're energetic beings, and that if we align ourselves, our own biofields, align it with the earth and align it with the stars, that we can amplify or optimize the results from the efforts that we're making in whatever it might be. Oh, okay. So, because it all does tie together. It's all bioelectrical magnetics. Okay. So if you align
Yeah,
all
and
these fields together, wow. Okay.
and it's also like you flow with the flow.
Okay.
So if we take the geocentric model of Earth, which we'll see in a slide, that means the Earth is in the center of our local galaxy, right, with the planets going around. Yeah, this one. And you can see external to the Earth, we have the moon orbit, and then external to that, there's Mercury, Venus, and the sun. And so this certain practice is talking about the relationship between the sun and the moon and the earth and the human. And so in the center of this diagram, this is Earth, this is where humans live, right? And we stand on the Earth, which has its electromagnetic biofield that is larger than us, because the Earth is larger than the human body. And then obviously the moon and the sun are orbiting this Earth, and they're larger than us again. So they're going to have a cosmic influence on the telluric or earthly realm. And the human is basically, with your feet on the earth and your hands stretching towards the heavens, we are the conduit between these two forces that are greater than us. But we can bring these forces into our body to help recharge and discharge energies in both directions. So we can bring in from the cosmos, move it through our body, push it into the earth, and in the opposite direction, we can pull it from the earth and then discharge it out to the cosmos. So this is creating this kind of toroidal field that we can harmonize our personal toroidal field with the telluric, earthly, and cosmic forces. And as that moon goes around the earth, so they say, it's all up for debate these days as well, isn't it? But 28.5 days makes a lunar month, and the sun takes one orbit around the earth, and that takes 360 days in the old calendars, 365 days in the new. 360 makes more sense because it is a circle with angles of light, which is the sun. So these two circuits in harmony make up the solar lunar calendar, which is a calendar involving the 360 sun rotation, split into 12 is 12 months or 12 zodiac. And then the moon, because it takes 28.5 days to go around the earth, if we put that into how long it takes to, how many it can do in 1 year, we get 13 months. So in one of those solar zodiac months, you'll get an occurrence where the moon will transit a zodiac sign twice. And so that's how the 13-month and the 12-month calendar, they actually work together. They're not separate. So that's kind of what I've learned while I've been writing about this and studying and trying to figure out what's going on. I'm like, because I've read a lot of people, they're like, oh, the solar calendar is bad and the lunar calendar is good. It's like, no, they're actually showing us that it's a system with interlocking parts. And if we can make observances of ourselves inside this, the influences of the system, we can start to really become in harmony with our external environment that affects our internal environment. And when we can harmonize those two, we are then not fighting the flow, and we're not causing stress on our electromagnetic fields. And therefore, when our bodies are sleeping, we can heal. And when we're eating, we can digest, and all of the things that we're meant to be able to do, and overcome all of the other influences that we're having to battle, all the new influences like Wi-Fi fields and toxins and crappy water and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Make us a bit stronger.
Yeah, so there's multiple concepts here that I kind of want to just touch on because each one of them could probably be like a 1 or 2 hour video. But the first one was the whole concept of terminology that we were just talking about a second ago. If we could kind of jump back to that, and then I'd like to jump back into this particular talk because this is more like a right up my alley, more of a how-to type of description. But I kind of want to emphasize to anyone listening that there's a Anna's books are on the subject of the terminology of the Bible codes, and apparently, Ana, could you kind of just briefly describe, like, how did you discover that the ancient texts are literally, metaphorically and and also in parable, but all of these different stories and verbiage that's used in these texts are actually healing health guides for humanity, right? But they're in code. And then how did you discover that code? Because that's the term Christ oil, right? And then, Christos and things like that. So can you just share real quick, like, because you have a whole book on that, but how would you condense that to 5 minutes?
Well, I guess the first time I heard about raising the Christ oil within, it's also called raising the chrism or the sacred secretion.
Yeah.
I first heard about that on Santos Bonacci's channel, on his YouTube channel. He's, a master of syncretism. In Chinese medicine, we call syncretism concordances, which is basically the ability to see the pattern and match up that, this archetype, maybe it's Jesus, has this word that means this certain thing, which means this in the anatomy and the physiology, which relates to this fixed star, which relates to this zodiac, which relates to this mythological Bible story, which relates to this mythological story in other cultures. And I watched his stuff in 2015, which kind of got me seeing that he was using syncretism to describe works that I had not read or had much interest in, which was maybe more of the Western alchemical teachings, whereas I had been fresh out of study of the Eastern. But once I saw that they were the same pattern, I was like, oh, I totally get it. Okay, cool. Also before that, I had watched the film Zeitgeist in 2009, and that's showing a really great breakdown of the Jesus Christ story in terms of it being a solar event, in terms of it being related to the winter solstice sunrise, and that is a cosmic event that turns out that it looks like the sun, or if you replace the O with the U, the sun, the Son of God.
Mm-hmm.
It sits still on the horizon for about 2.1 days, with I think it's the Northern Cross above it as an alignment, and it's showing that the sun dies on the cross and stays on the horizon, not moving, for 2.1 days. And this has been mythologically explained in the Jesus Christ crucifixion, resurrection stories, mythologies. So looking at zeitgeist is a really great way to, because they basically tell it through the Jesus myth. Then they say, oh, this is also Krishna, this is also Horus and Osiris and Isis, and it's repeated across cultures throughout time. So once we can see that these characters are the same characters, then it all becomes really easy.
Yeah, it seems like the ancients, or like, like a lot of people that are into history, or actual history, not the manufactured one that's fed to us, but the actual history. It seems like, we're a remnant society of waves of humans that have inhabited the earth and eventually blown themselves up or got eliminated somehow. But there's always a survival group of people that survive, and then we start up again, right? So it seems like, to me, the ancients have left us a guide towards understanding, reality, as in terms of our physical presence and our energetic presence, and just, our perceived reality, or just reality of us, and understanding us, understands healing, and so forth. So, it's just amazing that because I hadn't run across what you ran across. So I'm really intrigued by it. And I've just been kind of studying it this week. So got tons of questions, but I did want to kind of throw that out there, because anyone who's listening is probably just like myself, who's never even heard the phrase Christ oil. But I've heard of the concept of the Christ frequency, in terms of the concept that all of these ancient texts are literally, just codes for what. And, some people try to extrapolate all sorts of different meanings out of it, but it makes a lot of sense when it's aligned with astrology, in terms of, and you look at astro archaeology, right? When you look at how all of the different ancient buildings and monuments and things are aligned with the stars, you start really kind of wrapping this all up into one package and say, hey, I think those ancients left us a blueprint for how to understand reality, and then how to, avoid, right, whatever happened to them. It's even written into our DNA, right, the God code. But so I digress. uh,
Based on what you've just said, because
yeah.
how this all came about, I've got a big section of this which is all about Ireland.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about that. Like, how does this how does this tie to Ireland? Because you didn't
Yeah,
you have a
so
video on it, but I just find that fascinating. Go ahead, please.
well, so the the way it all started was, sorry, I was just laughing. The way it all started was I went to Ireland, and if you can see the map of Ireland on the right side there, it's got these 4 divisions in green and red and blue and yellow, and this is the 4 provinces of the land. And if you can view this land, it is looking like a human body, or a baby, or a fetus, or a bear facing west. And so the red province of Ulster is technically the head, and then the blue arms out the front pointing west, that's the arms and the hands. And then the green, or now it's on the new map of Leinster, yellow.
I'm just kind of showing. Sorry. Go ahead.
keep
I'm flipping
just keep
screens as
dancing
you're
around.
talking, so I
Yeah,
missed it. Okay, go ahead.
it's funny. So Leinster, the green bit, that's technically the spine, and the connection out of the spine, plugging the nerves into the organs of the torso. And then the yellow bit, that's essentially the lower part of the organs in the torso of the body, and the toes and the feet, and the bottom of the spine, the tailbone, the orifices of the body. So I kind of knew that a little bit before I went to Ireland, but I was not really thinking about it at all when I went to Ireland. And then I went into Dublin. and then I went to a place called Navan, which is just north of Dublin. I got a camper car and I drove around the island of Ireland for 17 days. And when I got back, I was like, hang on a minute, the trajectory I just did is actually something very significant. And I'd never seen it before until I looked at my wall on my bedroom of my house when I got back. And I had this other painting next to it, which you'll see on the left, and it's a Taoist artwork, and it's called the Nei Jing Tu, and it means the inner weaving or the inner warp. And what you'll see is this island facing west with a head and a spine and waters in the lower and little people dotted around doing little jobs. And when I looked at these two maps, essentially, I was like, oh my God, the trajectory I did around Ireland actually is a Qigong exercise called the Microcosmic Orbit. And so that means if we switch back to looking at the map of Ireland, Dublin is located just under the word Leinster in the Green province of Leinster. And when you drive up that east coast, which I did, and then I drove through the north of the north, and then I went to the west coast, and then I went a bit inland, then I went back to the west coast, and then I went a bit inland, and then I drove all down the west coast, and then I got to these counties of Clare and Limerick. I went all the way down to Kerry, which is the Toes, and I went through Cork, and then I went back up to Wicklow and Dublin, and then I left. And so that is technically a microcosmic orbit, which is a Qigong movement, which is taught through Taoism. So when I saw these two islands next to each other, I couldn't help but notice there were very strong similarities. And because at that time I had been listening to some work by some father and son duo author called Conor McDarry. Conor McDarry is actually a pen name, but it's a father and son duo. And the father wrote a book that was published in about 1923, and it was called The Wisdom Preserved in Bible and Pyramids. And inside that book, he was basically saying that the original Bible is Irish. So that's kind of all in the backstory of what was bubbling inside my subconscious since 2016. And I really, really wanted to one day explore whether or not this observation of this Taoist painting and Ireland had any matchups. And last year in 2022 was when I finally committed to the decision, and I took it as my full-time job to explore. And then I started finding out all this cool stuff, which is, you know, Ireland has the most megaliths in the world on any one land. And there's all of these megaliths, you know, as you mentioned before, the buildings aligned with the cosmos, they're all very, very, very aligned to solstice sunrises and sunsets, and summer solstice sunrises and sunsets, and the cross-quarter days of Halloween, which is called Samhain, and Beltane, and the first day of spring. It's all there. And when we start looking at these megaliths in more detail, and then we can match them up to all of the little characters that are on that Taoist painting, we can start seeing these really amazing correspondences between the megaliths of Ireland and the Bible codes.
So it's like Ireland is like the Gobekli Tepe. Uh, yeah, I mean that's pretty cool. That
Because
it aligns. Yeah.
in the study, I also read that a book by Rudolf Steiner called The Electric Doppelganger. And in that book, he's really inspecting and talking about the consciousness of the land, and saying that different lands, you know, that we all live in as the different continents and countries, these lands have different vibrations. And over time, different energies live in these lands as sort of entities, and the land itself. And so this land, as humans live on it, are receiving vibrations from these lands, and all different lands give out different vibrations, and all these different vibrations are telling different stories of different lands, the history. And so with that in mind, Rudolf Steiner was saying in his book that Ireland is the original Garden of Eden, which relates it directly to the Bible stories. And he said that there was the original Garden of Eden, which was Ireland, and it was copied and it was put aside as an untouched, pure paradise. And then all of the humans, accordingly, who got kicked out of paradise, ended up in the copy. And this copy is what the infiltrator energy has invaded. And this is what we're in right now. So that's hard to know if it's true or not. But if we do look back to, all of the megaliths of Ireland and the placements of them, and then the relationships I've made between them and the Bible and the anatomy and physiology using the Taoist information, we can see that there is a lot of biblical stuff there.
Yeah. And it all ties towards just our consciousness and our I guess the electrical energy, electric universe concept too, as well, right?
Yeah, and it's also showing essentially like a microcosm of the electric, microcosm of the electric magnetic movements of the body, and it's literally showing a blueprint of how to do the raising of the Christ oil as an energy movement process of inner alchemy.
Okay. So the ancients left us a blueprint that got replicated in multiple different philosophies and religions. And the blueprint is physically represented in Ireland, but then from the Taoists and the other different ancients also extrapolated that knowledge and put it into these different philosophies. And so now, which is totally cool. But I got a side question though. When the individual in Ireland said that the original Bible came from Ireland, was that the Colbrin Bible? Because I've read about that one, which was a
No,
Bible.
I tried to look into the Colbrin Bible, but I haven't gone in there with my full attention yet.
Yeah.
The
Neither have I.
Madari
I
work,
actually
which
have
I
a copy.
mentioned. Oh, you
Yeah.
have looked at it?
Well, yeah, I actually got the copy of the original. There's actually a fake one that was put out by, typical usurpers, right? But a copy of the actual original one was like basically held in a monastery, and then they started publishing it recently. But if you go on Amazon, you'll buy this other one that's fake. But the actual original one that you can get directly from this convent group. I think they have it online where they sell books. But anyway, so I got a hold of the original Colbert Bible and started reading it. It was just really hard to read though, because it's just it's your typical ancient text. So I couldn't comprehend it actually myself, but I'm aware of it. I'm aware of its story, and I learned about the Colbert Bible from Dr. Let's see, was it? I'll get back to it, but there's this other professor of physics that kind of was into the whole concept of our planet and things like that, and the Velikovsky books and things like that. And he actually was talking about the Kolbrin himself, saying that the Kolbrin ties more into the reality of our history than the other Bible that everybody accepts as the book of Christianity. So anyway, so that's a whole side subject, but I was wondering if that was the one he was referring to. Because that was
What
really,
language was that written in originally before it's
I think it was
translated?
written in Gaelic.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah, in Irish, in the Irish tongue, right? So, and isn't that also the home of the Druids and their entire mysticism and all of their,
Yeah,
ancient,
and what I do know a little bit about Druidism is it's basically about harmonizing with nature, which is
right?
Taoism.
Yeah, they're all literally they're holistic healers. They're like shamans.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like a
that's right.
matriarchal knowledge of the interchange between the negative and positive polarity.
Yeah.
It's
No,
the
it makes
sun
a lot.
rises and sets.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense because of everything that I've ever read. But I never put the pieces together until you started telling me, until I started watching your videos. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense given the history of this island, and also some of the other books that I've read where when you look at like the monoliths that are built there, even Stonehenge over on Great Britain, but those monuments were built at a time when the people supposedly were still in furs and nomadic. So where did in
Yeah,
other words,
nah.
Britain, right? So where did the people come? Where did they come from? Landed on Britain and built that thing. And so then
Hmm.
there's that tie, right? And there's also another tie. I found another book that talked about um, how the Egyptian society, all of that incredible pyramid building culture, didn't come from Middle East; it came from Ireland. So that's real interesting. I'm just kind of going off on a side tangent, but I just find all of this ancient history stuff so fascinating because we weren't taught in school what the real history was. So we're all on our own journey to find it. And for you to find this link between Ireland, this physical blueprint left on Earth by the ancients, and how it all ties into Taoism, and then how it ties into healing is so cool. So my next question though is that how-to question, right? So let's say for any one of us, we're all working on different things. Like whether it's people trying to have a child, people trying to overcome a disease, so forth. People trying to get through trauma. How do you actually do that would you say that trying to overcome these challenges is that considered raising the Christ oil, like trying to connect to universe? Because obviously,
Absolutely.
in my mind, okay, great. Because in my mind, the first step to healing, right, is to find that inner balance and put your being into a healing state. So is that the correct interpretation?
Yeah, well, there's multiple facets to self-healing, isn't there? Because you dive into one aspect of yourself, which is, okay, I've got a physical blockage. I need to sort that out. How am I going to do that? Oh, I can do pulsed electromagnetic field therapy on my sore knee, but then if I apply magnesium oil and iodine, and that's going to add minerals or elements in to help the healing process. So once I've healed my sore knee, now I'm able to walk and exercise, and then I can go and enjoy my life more, which is going to make me more emotionally balanced and happy and less in my mind because I'm using my physical body. So we have these physical, mental, emotional, spiritual needs, which all have to be harmonized through the clearing out of blockages of any one of those areas will help the other areas free themselves up too, which then allows us to look more deeply, more inwardly, once we start getting to know our own body on a more intimate relationship. And that is a relationship that we build through self-participation, right?
Hmm.
We become our own doctors and our own healers,
Right.
mostly because we want to fix something about ourselves. We've got a problem and we were looking for answers, and then we find something super cool like electro healing or whatever, and then we're like, oh, that resonates with me, I'm going to do that. And then suddenly you're helping yourself and then helping others and sharing, and then you start adding into your toolbox, and then you've got all this extra stuff coming up all the time. So that's where you want to start in that is where you end up, and then it's kind of like peeling open petals of a flower as you go, and realizing and realizing and realizing.
Yeah. So okay. So how do you incorporate this discovery? I'm going to go back up to this Taoist map, and I'm assuming that your basic training, in Chinese traditional medicine and Ayurvedics, that it all ties together in terms of alignment, right? So how do you take this idea of raising the Christ oil, of aligning with the stars, the astrological alignment of the moon in your particular, I guess the astrological sign, right? That's what you're saying. And how do you align that to treating patients?
Well, if we go down 2 slides,
Okay.
yeah, this is a cool because the best way to you know try and get heads around all this, it's a lot of complicated information
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
way, but it does have a pattern.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Okay.
so on this wheel on the right hand side, this is a wheel. It says 12 zodiac mineral cell salts wheel created by a lady called Eudora Inez Perry. And her husband wrote a book on the raising of the Christ oil called God Man, and his name was George Carey. So he was a physician. So this wheel is the zodiac. And so the zodiac is what is called fixed stars, and it's in 12 divisions. So it's that 360 circle of one orbit split into 12. And within those 12 sections, we find constellations. And those constellations have certain formations, which look like certain animals, because the zodiac actually means the wheel of the animals. And so on that, we're going to find animals like Leo the lion, or Cancer the crab, or Scorpion, Some of them are people, some of them are other symbols. And that is basically, the 12 months of the year. And when you were born in one of those months, and that means that you're a certain star sign, right? And then, with astrology, they've got a whole system which is developing, personal characteristics based on archetypes to know about your personality, your job, your career, your life path. There's all of that stuff. But in terms of raising the Christ oil, this is all about the month you were born in, and also the month you were conceived in. So, for example, I was born in October, which is Scorpio, but my conception month, if you go back 3 clicks on the dial, it would have been 1, 2, 3, which is Aquarius. So you're going clockwise from Scorpio,
okay.
1, 2, 3, that's Aquarius. And so this that would be my conception month, and then the Scorpio would be my birth month. And so we've got these 2 things to account for in the self-healing, which has biblical ties as well. But basically, when the moon comes into a conjunction with the sign you were born in, so for example, me, Scorpio, when the moon comes into Scorpio, it will stay in Scorpio region, because the fixed stars around the wheel, it's kind of like, you could imagine it's like a projector hovering around the Earth sky, and it clicks around and it clicks around and it clicks around, and it takes, for one full orbit of all of those 12 animals, it takes 25,800 years to go through all 12. And so they're always slightly moving, and as we know, the Earth is moving, the sun and the moon and the planets are all moving, but these constellations are called the fixed stars, because even though they're moving, they don't change their position in relation to each other. So we can rely on them as being a constant, fixed pattern. And so when the moon aligns with, for our example of Scorpio, the moon will stay in Scorpio for 2.1 days. And then after 2.1 days, it will go into Sagittarius. And then after 2.1 days, it will go into Capricorn. And then the moon will do every single star sign within a month. And so in that particular time of that 2.1 days, because the moon is conjuncting with the Earth and the sun and that star sign that you were born in, what we know about the moon coming, in conjunction with Earth, is that it has a compression effect, which is called gravity. It's squeezing on the Earth, and that causes the waters of the Earth to bulge out. And then this is causing basically an electromagnetic change, and then that is affecting the waters inside our own bodies. And a lot of that water that it's been affected is the cerebral spinal fluid, as it flows in and out of the brainstem. And what is important to know about the brain is that the cerebellum, or the cerebral cortex, or the bit of the brain that's directly under the skull that looks like all that grey matter, and then inside all that grey matter, there's all of the control room of the brain with all the different systems. That cerebral cortex, the grey matter, and a bit of grey matter at the very back of the occiput, called the cerebellum, the little brain, both of those tissues have a lot of an element called magnetite. And magnetite is one of the most magnetic substances. It is the most magnetic element in the world. So this is where it comes into the electromagnetic enhancement. So the external force of the moon in harmony with the month you're born in, which affects you because of your birth time and your particular arrangement of constellations that affect your pattern. When all that happens, you get a surge of, I guess, a magnetic force affecting the magnetite in your brain. And what we know about electromagnetic physics is that when you apply a magnetic field to the electron flow, it's going to help the electrons flow through the circuit more optimally and more efficiently. And so those electrons are in the cerebral spinal fluid, and they're also obviously in the whole body, but particularly in this spine and brainstem and brain. And this is going to cause all sorts of hormonal and neurotransmission accelerations. And then we can also, there's all of this other stuff that comes into this, which is that many people think or have supposed that this process of raising the Christ oil is optimizing DMT, dimethyltryptamine, to be released in the pineal gland, which is basically the radio station of the brain, which gives us that psychic communication system. And so what I found is that it may most likely not be DMT in the pineal gland, but more to do with the lungs, which is to do with breathing, and also the electrification of the spinal fluid, which can carry DMT through it. So
lots of questions. So the optimal time, is that going to be in your conception month or your birth month, or both?
So the activation will happen in your birth month.
Okay. And then for novices, I'm sorry, go ahead.
So you know how I said 2.1 days for each sign? When the moon goes from your birth sign and then it finally gets into your conception sign, that is a process of 7 days of creation.
Okay. And is that a window of time to try to focus on a particular issue, or should, if someone wanted to try to optimize this concept, to focus specifically on those 2 days that the moon is in their birth month or birth sign?
Well, this is one little handy tip that I found out through going through the Bible stuff. So the 2.1 days is basically the Jesus Christ, the essence, the seed, the spirit, is being born, being conceived, being born inside your body, inside your bodily substances. And it has to be cultivated, and it has to be pulled up from, it is basically born in the manger at Bethlehem, which is relating to the saliva, the swallowing of saliva, and the stomach. So the stomach is Bethlehem because Bethlehem means house of bread and meat. And the manger at Bethlehem, the manger means crib, where the baby lives, but it also means the place of chewing. And so it is important, obviously, to have the correct mineral balance within your body so you can produce a healthy quality Jesus baby seed. Does that make sense?
Sort of. I'm struggling here. I have never studied astrology in my whole life, so I'm completely a novice. What I'm trying to figure out, right, is like, as in you kind of hit on something that's really a big thing for me this year, which is I'm really trying to awaken my my third eye. this year. That's kind of like my personal goal. And so I'm trying to understand, how would I accomplish that, or at least, give it a good try, applying the concept of raising, the Christ oil. So if I get you correctly, there's a 7-day window every month where the moon is within your conception and birth signs, right? And then if I were to try to, let's say, focus on my third eye awakening efforts that I do, it's not, is it any time in those 7 days is where I should focus that effort? Or is it specifically like, in the conception 2-day period? Like how do I actually
It's
apply this towards greater healing?
so the conception, uh, sort of the inner conception, and that month you were born, for that Scorpio example, that's me. The moon will be in there for 2.1 days. And this is when you get the electromagnetic amplification.
Right.
And this is when you would do the Qigong exercise called the
Ah,
Microcosmic Orbit.
okay.
And so the Microcosmic Orbit involves moving energy from have you heard of Dantians in Qigong?
No, I haven't heard of that.
Okay, so for example, the head or the third eye, that's the upper, the heart is the middle, and the reproductive organs is the lower. And these are regions of energy centers, which the Chinese Taoists call Dantian. They also call them cauldrons. And in Maori healing, they're called the three hearts. And these are basically energy centers located in between the 7 chakras. And the Qigong Microcosmic Orbit exercise is basically moving energy from the lower through the middle to the upper, and then back to the middle, and then down to the lower, and it's doing that through the spine. And there's 2 meridians on the spine. One goes up the back and one goes down the front, and they meet in the mouth and they meet at the tailbone. And so doing this practice is basically optimizing the electromagnetic energy flow through the circuit of these 2 meridians. Yeah, you see them down there as the red and the blue.
Oh, okay. I get it.
Yeah, so
Okay.
the one important piece of this practice is that you see in the top of the head in the red, uh, it's got the nose and the mouth. And so the nose and the mouth is basically what we could consider as a spark gap. So a spark gap in electromagnetics, we use it to discharge energy in a circuit, right?
Hmm.
So to open and close the circuit, you can see this image. He's got the tongue touching the roof of the mouth.
Okay. Yeah.
And that is the keeping the circuit closed.
Right. Yeah. I actually was trained in Qigong. I remember doing this. I just forgot the name of it. So you breathe in through your nostrils, or you breathe in through your mouth, and you blow out through your nostrils with your tongue touching the top of your mouth. Right.
Pretty much. And at the beginning of this, you can do a few pelvic floor crunches or
Okay.
Kegels to try and touch the other end of the circuit together as well. So that's the basics of it. But if you do this microcosmic orbit when the moon's in your sign,
Uh-huh.
that's when you get the harmonic between you and the earth and the cosmos.
Okay. So then once you connect and create that harmonic between you and the cosmos, and let's say you're trying to work on third eye awakening, or a lot of folks, they're working on, releasing trauma. Is that when you would then, once you then align yourself through this Qigong practice, then the next step would be is to do a treatment of some kind, whether it's, using tuning forks or like, is that the next step?
No, this is basically the treatment.
This is the treatment. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So,
Oh, I get it. Okay, that just hit me. That
yeah.
just okay.
So
I just
this is
got.
a free energy
Oh
treatment.
yeah, when you connect the cosmos. Okay, okay, I get it. This is the
Woohoo.
treatment. I just
Okay.
overly complicated it. I've got so many
Oh,
toys. I just have to play with all of them, right? So I'm thinking, all right, I do this, I do this. I grab my tuning fork and my modulator.
I mean, you can see, but I overcomplicate things too. I'm just trying to, like, where do we start to explain
Okay,
this? But the simplicity of it is that it is an orbit. It's a circuit that happens within you. And if you do it at this certain time of the month, that's the healing.
that is the healing. I'll get it.
And I
Okay,
will
so
tell you something interesting about this, because you mentioned before, like, what people want to get out of this. And you said some people want to get pregnant, right? So
yeah, that's a
this,
big deal.
when the moon enters your sign and
Uh-huh.
causes this electromagnetic amplification, which you can use for healing if you do this microcosmic orbit to optimize that. This is also called the lunar peak, which is a very fertile time for men and women. And a woman can literally release a second egg in this period. So,
Oh,
so even if she's just had her ovulational period, or if she's on it, on her period, she can still release an egg right then. So this is, I've referenced this in my book, because one doctor had an interest in astrology, and he wanted to help Catholic women not have too many babies. And he found out that when he found out their birthday and started working with their astrology, he could predict when they would be most fertile. And so people have now been using it in the opposite direction, which is to help people conceive.
okay. All
Yeah,
right. That's pretty amazing. So,
it's
uh,
very amazing.
yeah, I mean, I'm pretty wild right now because, yeah, I did qigong as a young guy, and I got all the energy benefits out of it and improved health and so forth. But I never thought about it from this standpoint. I wasn't as I didn't know as much back then. But okay, so this is really cool. Um, so what do you recommend for people? So the recommendation, honestly, is to improve your health, improve your well-being. Um, Practice the microcosmic orbit qigong method on the days that your moon is in your sign. Is that kind of what it comes down to?
It is, on a very basic level, it is. Um, depending on where you're at, everyone's going to have a different experience with this. And depending on what you have to do with your life in those days, you're going to have a different experience. And there's certain things I've noticed about my own experience, because I've been doing it every month for the last 14 months. Every month is different. And there are certain things that I would recommend to not do and to do. So a recommendation is that you very much should be touching your feet to the earth while you're doing this.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask you that. I'm just looking for videos. So
Yeah.
obviously, everybody, if you just go on YouTube, you can see individuals practicing this microcosmic orbits. You'll know how to do it, and then in
I've
terms of
actually made some videos on my channel about it a bit
oh,
more as
cool, okay,
well.
take a
Yeah.
peek.
So there's heaps of information
Oh, right here.
online
Okay.
about it.
Yeah, this is
Uh,
Anna's YouTube channel. Okay, so then you've got your own. Do you actually do demonstrations in your video?
not yet. It's more just about showing the deeper energetics behind um, moving the energy up your spine into your brain. Where's the acupuncture points? Where are these energy centers? Um,
Okay.
how does it involve DMT? What's going on for the psychic stuff?
Okay.
Um,
Okay. Okay.
like the
So,
instructions
all right.
with just me talking and images.
Okay. So, go to yeah. So for those of you who are interested in trying this, I'm definitely going to. My next question is for people who are not astrologists or know anybody who is. How do you find out when the moon is in your sign? You just Google it.
So there's a very awesome website called moontracks.com. You go
Okay.
there And
Okay, here we go.
on that golden tab, you just go to the second one called Astrology Calendar 2023. Yes, this one.
Oh, okay.
What's your star sign?
Aries.
Aries. So let's look for Aries. That's on the 21st.
Right here.
Yeah, so it says Moon Arrow Aries. And that
Okay.
happens at 9:13 p.m. But this is in a PST time. So that is probably your time zone, right?
No, I'm 3 hours ahead of
3 hours.
them.
So
Okay.
that means, and this is the key for it as well with people, you have to convert that time
Okay.
into your time zone. So I use what is it? Time zone converter calculator. They have quite a lot of tools.
Yeah.
Um,
I use time
and
and
so
day.
oh yes, that's the same one, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So type
yeah,
in your
they're really,
city, and then type in PST, which is the time the website's time. So that I know right now it's 9 o'clock here and it's 7. So they're 2 hours before me, I guess. So that would be, or I'm 2 hours ahead of them. So it'd be like 11:13 at night on the 21st is when the moon goes into Aries. So at that moment, and would it be the rest of these, like these 2 days here, is the 2 days that the
yeah. So
moon
you can
stays
see
in
the
Aries?
22nd, the 23rd,
And then it
and
comes
then
out
on
right
the and then just after,
like
no, that's
11:21 p.m.
void of course. No, you've got to look for the blue writing. So go on to the 24th and you see the moon arrows to Taurus.
Okay,
So
so
that's
now,
telling us that the moon is now going to Taurus, and it's the next
okay,
sign. So that means the moon is leaving Aries. So this is the second time where the moon enters Aries on the 21st, and then after 2.1 days, or approximately, this is always taking about 52, 51 hours, then the moon goes into the next sign. And when this happens, this from the 21st and then 7 days after that, this is a time so for the 2.1 days, you can be practicing the microcosmic orbit. And then after that, I mean, you can practice it every day. But after that, this is a very important time not to have alcohol or what they call in the Bible unleavened bread.
what would that
So
mean?
they have, I didn't know about any Bible stuff before I looked into
Yeah,
this,
I
by
don't
the
even
way.
know
So
what bread is.
it's like, what is Bible stuff? But it's actually got a bit of a clue in there, which is don't eat leavened bread. And what's leaven got in it? It's got a fungus bacteria, which is a yeast, and it ferments and makes alcohol. So that's
Oh,
this,
okay.
yeah. So it's a festival of unleavened bread that is occurring for 7 days, which is all related to this cosmological stuff. But yeah, I've been trying to bring it back into practicalities, and because what you're doing in that 2.1 days is you're cultivating an energetic in your body. You're cleaning your body. You're baptizing your inner waters of your body. You're helping your body to release old energies, and then after that, you want to keep that new world vibration high. So this is a period where you would not have alcohol or bread with leaven in it, which is kind of interesting because I've been looking at this period between the birthday and the conception, which is these 7 days after, is that period of 7 days to create the world.
Okay, that's really interesting. Um, yeah, okay. I'm just trying to figure out, like, okay, so if this is the treatment, that it basically energizes your body, so then your body starts doing its thing, right? It starts healing what it needs to heal. And that also applies to trauma and to other things that that your body, you need your body to do. But then when it comes to like, and then even with conception, your body's going to be more, I guess, fertile or prepared.
Yeah.
But what about like if you had an intention, like you have an intention where you want to lose weight? How would you apply something like that to this practice? Like, would you just meditate on it during this period of time and to kind of
So
embody that
you know that
the frequency of wanting to do that into your biofield? Yeah, if you don't mind.
well, in the set of slides I've got, remember that Chinese Taoist painting that looks like Ireland, that is an
Yeah.
island. This one. So this has got little characters inside, and they're actually all of the organs of the body, and they're doing jobs, which I've explained in my books. There's so much detail. But once this is a Taoist painting that teaches you a way to use this as a tool to imprint this onto your body to use as a visualization tool. So while you're doing this microcosmic orbit, any kind of qigong or meditation, well, qigong's different from meditation because it's active. But when you're doing qigong, you know that you're doing this movement because it moves this meridian to open the organ charge to help your body be charging energy to that particular organ while you do your stretch with your arm and your leg. So while we learn qigong, we also learn that the movement helps the internal organ, right?
Right.
So this little painting is all of our internal organs. And the whole point of self-healing that has been helpful to me in my journey has been making it fun, making like when you think about your body and you think about there's all these little consciousnesses in there and they're all called cells and they're all doing little jobs, and you've got your organs and they've got consciousnesses and they're doing jobs. You've got your meridians that help flow energy to the organs, and everything's alive, everything's moving around, everything's bubbling or heating or cooling or steaming or chewing, digesting. It's all going on. It's very active. It's just like living in nature, right? And so once we start to familiarize ourselves with our internal workings, then we can start telling them what to do.
Ah, okay.
So,
All right.
so
So,
did you
okay.
did you
Yeah.
ever see that video of me talking about telling my thyroid what to do?
Yeah. Well, is that when you had the cold belly, the video on cold belly?
No, it was another one. Basically, I had a lump in my thyroid and I
Okay.
told my body what to do, talking directly to all my little cells. And because I know a little bit about anatomy and physiology, I was able to visualize that. And I told my cells what to do. I told them all to start breaking up the lump and going through the body and to be digested or urinated out of my body or passing out as a waste product. And I told my body what to do with my speaking voice out loud while I was laughing because it was so hilarious. And as I talked to my body and told it what to do, the thyroid lump disappeared within 10 minutes.
Wow. Okay.
So to answer your question about like how would I use this for helping my own health, lose weight, whatever,
Okay.
you want to use these Taoist tools. You've got the tool of the microcosmic orbit, which is the energetical movement. Then you've got the tool of that really beautiful painting showing all your little organs. And then you can apply that as a holographic overlay visual. And then you get into your body at this 2.1 days window of time where the moon enters your sign, where you're amplified. And then you can sit there and be like, right, guys, here's what we're doing. Everyone listen up. We're going to be moving energy from the base of the tailbone up the spine through the cerebral spinal fluid. When it gets to this point, it's going to do this, and it's going to feed energy into my digestive system, which is going to optimize and detoxify. And you can start doing that, and I do recommend learning a bit of anatomy and physiology because it's giving you the tools to understand your own inner mechanics.
Right. You need to you have to give your body the correct instructions. Okay, I
Yeah.
get it. Okay, this is so cool. It's a lot. I mean, it's this is like multiple encyclopedias all crammed into 60 minutes of talking to you. My brain is literally swimming. I get everything you're saying. I think I just need to process it. It makes sense, but man, there's a lot of stuff in here. No wonder you've been
Well,
gone
the
for a
whole
year.
I know I was going through, yeah. Well, because the whole book it is I'm just finishing off the last one, but the page count is over 1,000 pages. So I divided it into 4 books because it was it had to be split. So it's 1,000 pages with lots of diagrams showing all of the theory and the practical. So it is very hard to explain, in a short conversation about the scope of it all.
Right.
But I'm glad we've whittled it down to the basics.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Again, I want to be sensitive to your time. We're almost at the top of the hour, and I just want to say thank you. I mean, this has been really enlightening. I am always fascinated. I'm a tinker. I'm constantly tinkering with, being my own healer. That is my thing. I am my own healer. I loathe allopaths. I can't stand them, and I do everything myself, and that's my passion. That's why I tinker with so many different things, but you've introduced this concept to me that makes a lot of sense, and I just need to process it. And I've done qigong, so I understand that aspect. And so yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with me. And these are the 3 books that Ana has written. They're all the Return to the Garden of Eden. The first book one is Alchemical Laboratory, then Raising Christos, and then the Irish Elixir. Now you're working on the 4th book in the series. So what are you calling that one?
that's called Inner Compass.
Okay.
That is basically the instructions to all of what I've been talking about. So a lot of the stuff that I was talking about at the beginning of our talk, it's got Irish maps and this and that and cosmology.
Yeah.
It's all a bit confusing because we did jump around a little bit. So um, the last book is slightly different to the first 3. The first 3 are the theory. So, for example, in an alchemical laboratory, that's got all of the yin yang, it's got all of the anatomy and physiology, it's got the Taoist theory, it's got the microcosmic orbit, what is it? It's got all of the human and meridian system, and then how that meridian system relates to electromagnetic torus fields, and then how our body relates to electromagnetic torus fields and Tesla coils. So the spine of the human is actually with the brain on top is a Tesla coil with a ball on top. So it's kind of showing the electromagnetic body through Chinese Taoism as a circuitry system, so we can get practical with it, if that makes sense. Like if we can start imagining that our meridians are electrical circuitry systems flowing water, which contains electricity,
Right.
then we can start owning that. Like be your own doctor, take charge of your own body when you know where things are.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's the key to everything, right? Um,
Yeah.
okay. All right. So let me just go ahead. I just want to just let everybody know, that in addition to you being an active in-person practitioner in Bali and now an author of multiple books, uh, just for anyone who's interested, I understand that you also do over the phone or online consultations. Is that correct?
I'm doing bioresonance now remotely with a technology called Genius, which uses the voice and the photograph and the birth date. And what else does it use? Photograph, birth date, voice. Oh, my mind's gone blank. One other thing.
Okay.
And basically, it records the voice pattern and turns that into a frequency, a specific frequency that is like your particular fingerprint. only you have this frequency on that particular moment of that day. And then that frequency is compared to everything I have in my technology. And then depending on what is coming up through the Chinese medical diagnostic discussion, we have different areas of your life to harmonize. And I do that harmonization through applying frequencies, which may be certain acupuncture points, minerals, vitamins, thoughts, emotions, Bach flower remedies. I have thousands and thousands of frequencies.
Wow, that's
So
awesome.
that's how I'm able to help people with my acupuncture Chinese medicine knowledge, giving them these frequencies that get played back as sound, plus giving them diet, lifestyle advice, or, you know, all this other information that does come into self-healing, because it's not just, oh, I can use a frequency and everything's going to be better again. No, you might need your spine aligned by an osteopath, or you might need a heavy metal detox, or you might need this and that, or do you just change that part of your diet and you'll have an Ayurvedic, dietary stuff going on. So I like to give people as much information as I can to make changes in their life so they can use all of it and it will benefit.
That's awesome. So anyone who's interested in contacting Ana, the website is anayasciencewitch.com. And then you can basically contact her through the contact page here. So you do distance healing, you do on-site healing, you do consultations, and you're an author. I don't know when you get a chance to rest. That's a lot going on. But I just want to say thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I'm really excited. I want to kind of start. Luckily for me, I only have to wait a couple of days, right? And then the moon will be in Aries, and I can go ahead and give this a try. I really, like I said, I really want to try to work on my third eye. But yeah. Did you have
that I've discovered, because you get very electromagnetically charged and sensitive, and you definitely become smarter, more psychic. You'll be able to put dots together more easily, even if you're not doing the actual microcosmic orbit. You will notice that you have this happening in that time window. But what I've noticed is that you should be very careful about what you put into your consciousness. So don't watch any creepy movies or anything on like TikTok or, the world of the nutcases, because that will be basically putting rubbish into your system that you have to clean out. So I have noticed that if I expose myself to these kind of, fields of frequencies that are not necessary to my life, I do at some point have to get them out of my body because I saw them.
Yeah, I get that. That's dark energy, and I avoid it like the plague, but you can't help but run across it. I actually do avoid it, but you can't run across it if you're watching something on, like watching a movie, and all of a sudden some kind of advertisement for another movie pops up, and then all that dark imagery pops into your head, right? And I try to avoid it, but you just can't. But you're right. Once it comes, it's a frequency, and once that frequency comes into your biofield, you got to get it out of there. It's really dark. It's bottom line to me. It's just all dark energy. It's not good for us. I agree. Thank you for that tip, though. So yeah, anybody who wants to learn more, and there is a ton to learn. I bought all your books. So I'm working on them. I mean, each one's like 300 pages. So there's a lot of content, but it's fascinating. And I've been watching your videos, and I'm learning a lot. And I just want to say thank you so much for this, taking time to talk with me and about helping me as well as anyone watching, how to raise your Christ oil, how to align yourself with the cosmic energy so that you're all, in alignment. And that itself is a healing practice, which is amazing. So I'm glad to learn this. I'm just in a learning mode right now. I'm excited, and I want to just say thank you. So anyone who wants to reach out to Ana can reach out at her website here. You can reach me at the Tinkers Academy. And then we also have a Telegram chat group, kind of a new one. It's called Health and Healing. And I've just opened it up on Telegram. It's kind of an old one that I converted. And Anna's in there, I'm in there, and a whole bunch of other healers are in there as well. So if you're interested in health and healing, different Telegram chat group, you're more than welcome to come join us, ask us questions, and chat with the rest of the group. So there you go. Is there anything else you want to share with us today? before we go?
No, I just want to say I love your group. I've met very, very amazing people in your group. And yeah, thank you very much for having me on your show, because it's you said 2 years since we had a talk.
Yeah, that's I know that was amazing. It was, and that talk, by the way, if anyone wants to kind of see how Anna uses bioelectrical magnetics in her practice, that video talks about how to apply the violet ray as well as the Lakhovsky multi-wave oscillator in treatment of various, issues, illnesses, injuries, and so forth. So that was that 2 years ago, and it seems like from that moment till now, Anna, you have come so far in terms of just this universal cosmic awareness. It's amazing how much you're evolving. It's so exciting to talk to you. It really is. I mean, it's kind of, you kind of went because you disappeared off Telegram for about a year, and I was wondering where you went, and then you pop back up. And you're like, "Hey, I wrote books," and I'm like, "Oh, cool!" And so it's just really great that you reconnected with us, and I want to say thank you.
Oh, thank you too. Yeah, I'm glad to be out of the hermit's cave, because I realized that every time I was in the book and then I went out of the book and played with my friends, I got very distracted and I couldn't do it. So I had to kind of limit my social life
Go
to
hide in
just
the
get it
jungle.
done.
So you're hiding in the jungle to finish your book, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so I'm going to sign off now. Don't
Yeah.
hang up. Don't hang up yet. I'm just going to go ahead and end the recording now and say thank you to everybody for taking the time to sit with us today. I hope you learned something. I hope this was helpful. And if you want to get a hold of us, you know where. Thank you. Aloha.